Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you are either doing NaNoWriMo 2020 or you're writing in general and you're watching this out of time, in which case, how is the future? I hope the world still exists. If you haven't already, I recommend going back and watching my last video, which could appear here or here depending on how things work. I'm gonna put a link to the video up here, where I talk about what Plantober is all about. I'm not going to recap it here because I don't want this video to be too long. So welcome, you're going to try and write a book at some point, hopefully right now. I recommend grabbing a pen and a pad, notebook, piece of paper, whatever you want, laptop if you want to be that person. Before we start, I'm going to give you a quick breakdown of the programs that I use to plan a book. So I've got my laptop over here which has all of my notes on it. So a lot of people wonder what programs to use to write a book, and the God's honest truth is it doesn't matter. You can plan a book in a notepad, you can plan a book on napkins if you so choose, or you can use Word. There's also Scrivener, Scrivener, depends how you want to pronounce that, which is a paid program, which is great. I am having a bit of an issue with them at the moment, so I'm not going to promote them right now. But there's also loads of free online things. At the moment I'm using one called Plot Factory, which is a free online tool where you get to create different sections for your book. So I'm going to put some links below for different programs and things that you might want to use. If you don't just want to use a basic Word document. It's up to you, basically, and just see what you like. So the things we're going to be covering in today's video are coming up with your plot for your book, writing a short synopsis, coming up with characters and naming them, and also coming up with the title of your book. Now, I'm not going to actually physically help you do that, I'm just going to guide you through some ideas and suggestions, which is what all these videos are going to be about, which might hopefully help you in making decisions if you're lost. If you already know what you're doing, then that's great. So let's talk about plot. If you are watching this video and you don't already have a story idea, there's not much I can do to help you with that. If you do have a story idea already, then I'm going to try and help you expand on it and basically come up with the plot. What is a plot? It's a good question. The plot is basically the backbone on which you build the rest of the story. You could be sitting there thinking, I have got this great idea and there's a guy and he is a professional killer, which is a great idea. But to turn it into something more, you need to figure out what the driving force is, and that is what the plot is. To build up on that kind of idea, you would do something like, there's a guy who's a professional killer who's retired, he gets a puppy, someone kills that puppy, and then he decides to get back into the game and kills everybody that he meets, which is basically the plot to John Wick, which is prime Keanu time. But we won't talk about that right now. But that's how it works. So you have your basic idea and then the plot is basically more detailed. So I want you to, right now, or whenever you're watching this, or whenever you want to do that this week, is sit down and think about the idea that you've had and maybe just flesh it out and write a couple of sentences about what the story or the plot actually is. So for me, my plot for this year is a girl who lost her younger sister at a very young age, and now she's grown up and she finds out that her sister isn't as lost as she thought, and actually she escaped into a fantasy magical world, and so she now gets to go and rescue her. I'm still working on it, so that's what I'm going to be doing this week with you. So that's the general idea. And now that you have decided on a plot, we're going to take a minute to, whenever you want this week, because that's how it's going to work, I'm going to give you a week to do these things, we're going to write a synopsis. So a synopsis is basically like the blurb that you'd read on the back of a book, but with all the spoilers included, because the synopsis is something for you to have, to tell you what to do, rather than like a teaser for other people. Having a well-written synopsis, or even just a basic synopsis before you start writing your novel, will really help you stay on track, and when you get to those points where you think you don't know where you're going with something, or you're a little bit lost, rereading your synopsis can really help you continue and not get writer's block. So whilst I'm not telling you to get completely bogged down with your synopsis this week, because a lot of people tend to fret and get caught up in putting too much information in a synopsis straight away, this week is just about writing a paragraph or two just to explain what you want the story to kind of be about. We're going to go back into this and tweak it in a week or two, I can't remember. So don't worry too much, just write down as much of the idea as you can and go from there. A great idea if you don't know how to start writing a synopsis is obviously Google, but also just Google synopses for your favourite books, or any books really, and just see what they say. So a great example really that I think, which a lot of people probably won't agree with, is the synopsis that I'm about to read you. I'm going to be looking down because I can't read this from memory. And I think this is a good example. High school student Bella Swan, always a bit of a misfit, doesn't expect life to change much when she moves from sunny Arizona to rainy Washington. Then she meets Edward Cullen, a handsome but mysterious teen whose eyes seem to peer directly into her soul. Edward is a vampire whose family does not drink blood, and Bella, far from being frightened, enters into a dangerous romance with her immortal soulmate. That, to me, is a fantastic synopsis. Even if you don't like the book Twilight, it completely tells you exactly what the story is about. And it's precise enough to give you direction if you're writing, but it's not so restrictive that it kind of tells you every single plot point that happens along the way. So far you might think that these tasks are difficult, maybe you don't, but if this is your first time writing, then it might seem like you don't really know what you're doing or where you're going. So this week I really want you to take a break from the kind of tough challenge of writing a synopsis and just pick a handful of characters that you want to name, and give really short descriptions. I find this is actually a really fun part of writing. I find naming people really difficult, so I do use name generators sometimes just to get general ideas. Sometimes I already have names in mind, but sometimes I don't, and that's cool, like don't worry about it. Name generators are fantastic resources, and there are so many free ones on the internet, so I will link some below, just with the ones that I've used, and feel free to go and find your own, or if you are great at naming things, then good for you. My suggestion is to open a Word doc or a notebook or one of the tools that you might be using to write, and just name your characters, maybe put the age and a quick description. So if you were describing me, you know, I'd be very pale, deathly pale, blue eyes, blue short, messy hair, you know, whatever, do whatever descriptions. Don't go too deep into it because we are going to be writing character sheets in a couple of weeks, so we'll be doing more for that, but just have some fun, come up with some characters, maybe like the main character, the side character, and whoever. If you've got a villain, maybe write about the villain because that's always cool, and do what you want. This is all about practice, particularly this week. It's just about getting into the practice of thinking about it. So really I just implore you to have the most fun when you're doing this and don't stress too much, because all the stressing is saved for November. Lastly this week we're going to name our books. I know a lot of people tend to like to name things afterwards, personally for me, so if you are that sort of person, don't worry about it. For me, I love to name books before I start, just because I think it's more fun to know what the name is going to be, which obviously can be changed in the future. One of my favourite ways to name a book, other than just panicking and naming it whatever pops into my head at the time, is to do a spider diagram. So when you're naming anything or trying to come up with ideas, I always think spider diagrams are the best way to go about it. So maybe come up with some adjectives you can think for the book, write them all down in a spider diagram, and just keep going until you come up with loads of different words and parallels between the words, and get a great breakdown of what the book is going to be about. I'm going to go back to the Twilight example. I don't know why I'm just in such a Twilight mood at the moment. So Twilight is a story about a girl who represents the day and a vampire who represents the night. So the joining of these two characters is obviously in Twilight, the time between these two times of day, which is a really literal and obvious choice, but it works so well and it's so thematic. So you can be as literal as you want, or you can be more poetic, or a lot of people tend to use song lyrics for book titles, which I've noticed being a trend over the past couple of years. So just have a think about what your book is about, write down some ideas, write down as many ideas as you want, and just pick the one that speaks to you. Like I said before, you can change it, but it's just fun to have a title so you know what you're working on and it's not just an unnamed project, because I find unnamed projects are easier to drop than a book with a title. I hope that this video has been helpful. I hope it's given you some ideas just to kickstart your journey into writing for NaNoWriMo or for whatever you're working on. I'm going to be doing these challenges myself this week, so please be sure to follow me on Instagram because I will be Instagramming. And I'm also going to be updating my NaNoWriMo profile with my synopsis and some other stuff over the next week. So if you are signed up, please be sure to add me as a friend so we can follow each other, and leave a comment below just to say if you're doing this and just let me know how you're getting on. And I want to know the titles of your books and what it's about, basically. So good luck, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and come back next week where we're going to be talking about fleshing out our synopsis and giving it a start, a middle and an end, clearly defined, writing some character sheets and basically coming up with more details about the characters, figuring out who they are and what they're doing and what their main drive is, and also starting a Pinterest board, which is my favourite thing to do when I'm writing a new book. So until next time, good luck, and I will see you next week.